But here, as IU Football Media Day taking place today, we've had Big Ten Media Days already, and now we're joined by Chief from Barstool Media Sports in Chicago. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. You have as much energy as Tom Allen does. Must be infectious down there in Bloomington.
I'm telling you, you have to almost down here. You got to do to keep up. But, yeah, here live from IU Football Media Days on this Thursday. A lot of anticipation and excitement going into this Big Ten season. I know you just did an interview with Tom Allen, something that probably normally you would not be doing, interviewing the Indiana football coach.
Yeah, we have a lot of love for the Big Ten and Indiana in particular, so we don't have any alumni on our show, but I don't know, I've always had a soft spot for Bloomington and IU and the tradition with basketball. I love that floor, and I love the fact that they're getting it going for football now too. And Tom Allen, I'm a believer. Leo, the whole thing. I don't know how you can't get excited about that guy, Newcastle, Indiana. Like, he seems like the perfect guy to make Indiana football a success for a long time. I hope he's there forever.
That's one of the things, the national perspective, covering IU all the time. Of course, you have your takes on that, but the national perspective generally takes a lot longer to follow along, with good reason. Indiana has basically sucked in football for so long, but this is a turnaround of drastic proportions of where they are competing with the likes of Ohio State. We saw that last year. That expectation is there for this year. It's crazy when you're talking about Indiana football to do that, but it's a fact and it's here.
Yeah, and I think nationally, at least from my perspective, I would always think of IU football as a tailgate school. Like, you go, you tailgate, and then you go to the bar. You don't even worry about the game. You don't even go in and leave at halftime. It's just the tailgate, and that's it. And now it's like you're circling dates on the calendar. Opening week against Iowa, like, that's a big game. They got Cincinnati. That's a big game. They scheduled Notre Dame. It's not for 10 years, but they're out there, like, making those types of headways. And I think for the first time, teams are like, either, yeah, we want Indiana to schedule that look good, or maybe even, I don't know if we want to play Indiana. They're too good. So, like, they're getting up into that echelon where it's like they're a program to be taken very seriously. And I think it's just good for the Midwest and good for the Big Ten, and it makes the season more exciting. And I know last year, I don't know what the COVID protocols for you guys at Indiana. I'm not sure, but I hope the fans are able to get back in there and be loud and stay for the game after the tailgate now, because they got a real team and Pennick's coming back. Like, it's I'm ready for football, and I'm ready to kind of follow along with IU now that I want Tom Allen to be like my uncle. Like, that guy, like, I fell in love with that.
Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition also with us. That's a new one, Uncle Tom.
Don't say that.
Yeah, that
was words, not mine. Yeah,
that one came out. That is not what I was meaning by that. But Uncle Tom Allen is what I meant. But everyone's great favorite uncle. But Dustin Schutte, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, you talk about Tom Allen's energy, and the first time I was at Media Days, at Big Ten Media Days in 2018 or 2019, getting a chance to hear him speak, like he's like his own locomotive. Like, as soon as he gets going, man, he fires himself up. I'm curious to know, of all the people you've been able to talk to and interview and just speak with, where does he rank in terms of energy? And is there anybody that you've talked to that is kind of falls in his category?
That is a good question. I mean, we've had Pat Fitzgerald on. He's a little bit more low key, but has that, you could tell he's got that internal fire. I don't know that there's anybody that just exudes it and it's so genuine the way it is with Tom Allen. Like, he gave this speech. We asked him about, he spent a lot of years in as a high school football coach, and his dad's a high school football coach. And we asked him about, what was that like? And it reminded me of the Field of Dreams speech, where he's talking about, like, the lights and the thrill of the grass and the smell and the band. Like, there's not one aspect of football that guy doesn't, eat for breakfast, live, like, he just loves every second of it, every element of it. And it's infectious. Like, I did that interview. I'm like, I need football to start right now. Like, absolutely right now. I'll do 2-a-days for a couple of weeks if that's what it takes to get football here sooner. That guy was absolutely fantastic. And to answer your question, like, I don't think nobody comes to mind that brings it with as much authenticity as Tom Allen did.
And I think that's the key. It is exactly the key. It is authentic. It's authentic beyond belief. It is, the sincerity is completely there. And you can sell a bit of goods to some people for a while, but the sincerity has to be there because it will eventually be seen through. And he is as sincere as any human on the face of this planet, and that comes through. It comes through to the parents. I think that's why Indiana has the most kids from the state of Florida on the roster of any team in the Big Ten. That's not by accident, and it takes a lot for that to happen, and Tom Allen has been the reason.
Yeah, I believe it. We had him give a living room speech to us too. Like, I want to know what his recruiting speech was, and it gave you a little like shiver down your spine. You're like, man, like, so when you combine that with, you're a part of building something, and you have this great man as your kind of your father figure of the program, and it's the Big Ten. Like, it matters. It just seems like they're on their way to being if I would say that before, I would say, man, if Indiana, could they ever be as good as what Kirk Ferentz built in Iowa? And I think that's kind of the model. Like, there's no reason why they can't get to a position where they're challenging for the Big Ten. If he is, I didn't know. He didn't mention that he has the most kids in Florida. That's really something. So he's starting to recruit nationally and locally, and people are taking notice, and it's great to see. I really hope that they, I want a strong Big Ten. And with all the different realignments and this and that going on, I want the Midwest to still be a place where football matters. And I want the programs that are here, that I want the Big Ten to still mean Midwest, and having another strong program, right in the heart of Big Ten country, I think is really good for the league and good for people all across the Midwest.
Dustin covers the Big Ten for Saturday Tradition exclusively, so he's very in tune with that. And down in the Southeast, where all these players, where Indiana has increased their footprint, so he knows well of that. Actually, Dustin, I'm gonna let you close the show out as I go get prepared for the Big Ten Media Day. So I'm gonna say bye to you guys, and thanks to you as I jump off here and run upstairs to meet with Tom and those guys. But I'll appreciate you, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Well, give Tom my best. And and thanks for having me. Nice to meet you guys.
All right. Well, I'm staying on. You guys can stay on, but I'm going to let Dustin close the show with you guys.
Sounds good.
I just
Kick me out, John.
So one of the questions I had, it sounds like you're a college football, maybe a purist like I am. All these.
I am.
I go back to the Big Ten, and I can't remember back to when the Big Ten had 10 teams, but I remember when they had 11 teams, and they had that fun logo with the hidden 11 in there and everything. I really am not a big fan of the realignment, Texas and Oklahoma shifting over to the SEC and some of the big time changes, but I mean, that's what's coming. What are your opinions on realignment? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you just kind of change with the times? Like, I drag my heels knowing it's coming, but I don't have to like it.
Yeah, I will vote for any candidate, and I know they don't have this power, but I would vote for anybody that promised to put the college football conferences the way they were in 1998. Like, that's what I want. I want it to be regional. I want those rivalries. The fact that, like, the backyard brawl doesn't exist anymore, and I think they're trying to bring it back in the next couple of years, but they're not going to play it at the end of the year. So it's like, what are we doing? Texas and A&M haven't played on Thanksgiving. Like, that's the one shining light, I guess, from Texas moving to the SEC, was that you'll get that game back. But it's like, come on. Like, that's the league. College football is about tradition. It's about rivalries. It's about, they're like that regionality. And I also don't remember, like, one of my earliest memories of Penn State is their first Rose Bowl against Oregon. I think it was like 1994 or something. Like, I was a little kid. Yeah. But, like, I wish, we could go back in time and let them join the Big East. So then the Big East has Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, and then maybe Boston College doesn't leave, and Va Tech doesn't leave, and Miami, and then we could just have college football be what it was supposed to be, which is in the way it was designed. And I think that that's healthier and better, and probably leads to more parity and just more, those traditions. Like, I love the old Oaken Bucket and these different rivalry trophy games, and the brass spittoon and all these different things that just, it feels like they don't matter as much, and it's all about the dollar. And I am a capitalist, but this also just doesn't feel right. So I don't like it. I'm with you. I'm dragging my feet. I'm doing all I can to stop it, which is tweets, which
Chief,
is not,
on another
which is
note,
nothing. Yeah.
Exactly.
On another note, with the college football playoff expansion, I know that's kind of been put on hold with all this conference expansion going on. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think they should do with the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think if you're going to these super conferences, then I guess you have to do 12. Otherwise, I don't know how you just determine who qualifies. I always thought the perfect number was 6, because then you could have. And I wouldn't have automatic bids, but I think it would kind of lead to that, in like an unofficial automatic bid, and then one free, one at large or so for either a group of 5 or Notre Dame or a second SEC team, whoever is worthy. But and then maybe you have so it's kind of like the NFL where the top 2 would have a bye, and then maybe the 3-4 seeds get they get to host a game. Like can you imagine? A game at Ohio State in January, like the cold, the flurry swirling off, blowing down from the Great Lakes, like that would be awesome. And
that way you would have more variety too, instead of just having the Alabama Clemson Invitational every year.
Yeah, and look at this is kind of dark to say. Nick Saban's not going to live forever. Okay, so I know people are caught up in the Alabama. He's unbelievable, and they deserve to be there every year. They're incredible, and Clemson, they've what Dabo's done down there, it's awesome. But these things are cyclical, and I've USC was unbelievable when I was a kid, and I grew up loving Notre Dame, and so it's like, man, Reggie Bush is just dominating us, and then Miami had their run, and then and then there was the Florida had their run, and I just like Alabama. It's as long as Saban's alive and coaching, Alabama's going to be great. But, I don't think that we need to make this reactionary thing to expand just because it's Alabama and Clemson all the time. Like those things won't last forever, and then new teams will circle in and cycle in, and the rest of the country just has to be patient while Alabama has a 20-year dynasty or whatever it's going to end up being.
But and then to kind of bring this full circle, we talked earlier about loving the regional aspect of the game, loving those rivalries. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, a lot of programs, you might have 3 or 4 programs that were thinking national championship, and then everybody else, like if you won the Big Ten, you wanted to go to the Rose Bowl and beat the Pac-12 champion, and you didn't really care who was winning the national championship game. I mean, yeah, we were all going to watch it, but that was a big deal. And now we've gotten to the point where it's like, it's the Rose Bowl. Everybody, you have 10 to 15 teams that if they're not in the playoff, their season's over. They don't care about the Rose Bowl. They don't care about the Orange Bowl. And so that's where I think that there's a little bit there could be a potential drop off in interest. And so the reason I kind of like that 12-team field is I feel like it incorporates more teams for a little bit longer, deeper into the season. Whereas now, if you have Georgia or Clemson or Michigan, they lose their first 2 games, it seems like the fan interest really plummets until that final game of the season. That's just my opinion, and so that's why I think anything other than like if I could go back in time, like bowls and polls or the 2-team BCS system, I think we thought the grass was going to be greener with a 4-team playoff, and it really, in my opinion, it hasn't been great.
Yeah, I do love the playoffs. I agree with you about the other bowls. Yeah, I don't know. The Rose Bowl to me, it is different when it's Pac-12 or Pac-10 and Big Ten, because that is the granddaddy of them all. And when you flip on the TV on New Year's Day, and they're out there in Pasadena, and the grass is like this green that you haven't seen in 6 months when you live in the Midwest, and it's like, wow, that is so beautiful there. And they paint the sidelines in team colors, and I do think the Rose Bowl still matters. And I remember they had the playoff game there a few years ago with Baker and Oklahoma against Georgia, and that was just like this spectacular game, an unbelievable setting. So I do still think the Rose Bowl matters. I don't think it matters as much to the Blue Bloods. Like, I don't think it matters to Ohio State anymore. But I think if you see like an Iowa or Purdue or some of these, or in Indiana, like, can you imagine the response if Indiana got to a Rose Bowl? They got one of the largest alumni bases in the country. That place would be a sea of red if Indiana made the Rose Bowl. So I do still think the Rose Bowl matters, but I do agree that some of the bowl system in general has kind of been watered down, with the exception of the Arizona Bowl, the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl coming this January, or New Year's Eve rather. But yeah, there's so many bowl games, and I love bowl season too in general, where it's like you get the Holiday Bowl is always like one of my favorites, where you have like, some mid-level Mountain West team against either Big Ten or Pac-12 team. It was always a great game. Like you get before Oregon was Oregon, they put up 40 points in the Holiday Bowl. And so I don't know. Like I always love the bowls. I hope that doesn't go away with this expanded field and Super League conferences and all that, because it is like, it's special. Like, and I the gambling is legal in Indiana now too, like it is in Illinois. But I have like very distinct memories from just random, the Belk Bowl, Cincinnati, Duke. Like you just like have these memories, like these games that shouldn't happen and don't matter, but are wildly entertaining. So I don't want to like lose that element either, as that carries you through like the holiday season. Like I love bowl season.
Chief, a couple more things before we wrap things up. Put yourself in the shoes of an Indiana fan real quick. What do you think should be the realistic expectation in terms of record, or what kind of bowl they should make? What do you see Indiana doing this year?
This year specifically?
Yeah, this year specifically.
I want to kind of give me 1 second. I want to pull up their schedule.
Okay.
Is it Indiana football schedule? I think that they're knocking on the door, right? I mean, they got Iowa. I think that they should be the Iowa of the Big Ten East. Like that's kind of the model. Like in Iowa, which is, I feel like people might take offense to that. Iowa has been an awesome program for 25 years now under Ferentz, and they have years where they dip down to, I think they might have had like a 4-win year here and there, and a 500.
And they were on the cusp of a football playoff appearance a few years ago.
They lost to Michigan State, but yeah, and they've been to the Rose Bowl, they've been to the Orange Bowl. They've had a great run under Kirk Ferentz, and I think that is something that Illinois now with Brett Bielema should be aspiring to, and same thing with Indiana and Tom Allen. Now Indiana's got a little bit tougher path because they're going to have Ohio State on the schedule every single year as a team in the Big Ten East. But they, and Michigan and they I'm looking at the schedule right now. It's brutal. It's a brutal.
Yep.
It's a brutal schedule because you got Iowa as the crossover. That's not a slouch team, obviously, as we're talking about. Cincinnati's top 15 team. Penn State. I don't really believe in Michigan State. I think they're dead. I think if you get to 7-8 wins with that schedule, and you're Indiana and Penix is healthy and you're competitive against Ohio State, then I think that's a very good year, and people should be happy about that. And then, and you just can continue to build. I think it's more about probably having a marquee win this year, be it Ohio State or Michigan or somebody like that.
And a bowl victory. They're on a 3-game or more than a 3-game bowl losing streak. They haven't won a bowl in, I think, since the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's because they're never in it. So exactly. even just getting to a point where Indiana football has a bowl game every year is quite the accomplishment. I was looking up before we had Tom Allen, like the all-time winningest coaches at Indiana, and I think it was only Bill Mallory had a winning record for his career. So all the other coaches that they've ever had were still under 500. So if you get to the point where you're Indiana football and you're in, even if it's that, the top, Continental Tire Bowl or whatever, if you're going to a bowl game every year, you're a good program. And then you sneak up on people, like they cost me some money in that Ohio State game last year, that comeback. But if they, that game, and then, they beat Penn State, and if you can mark up a couple of these wins against the Blue Bloods, and it's like, hey, we're getting there. We're still growing. We're moving. We're building. And I think that's a really good pitch to recruits. We're like, yeah, I'm choosing between, Cincinnati, or I'm choosing between Illinois and Indiana. And it's like, well, you come here, you're going to go to a bowl game. Mm-hmm. And, we almost knocked off Ohio State. You come here, we'll beat Ohio State. And I think that's a good pitch and something that, Indiana should take pride in. But I think everybody kind of has this thing in college football where they all think they're the prettiest girl at the dance, and they don't really appreciate what they have. Yep. And And I hope Indiana doesn't fall into that trap, because you see it. Like Illinois, Ron Zook had a good run here. They went to the Rose Bowl, and they said, that's not good enough. It's like, well, you're Illinois. You're Illinois. You're not Ohio State.
Yep.
Like that. You go to a Rose Bowl every 7-8 years, or big bowl game every 7-8 years. That's good enough for Illinois. And I hope Indiana, if they get to 8, 9, maybe 10 wins some years, that they appreciate it properly, because it's obviously not an easy thing to do, is to win at football in Indiana.